ॐ आप्यायन्तु ममाङ्गानि वाक्प्राणश्चक्षुश्रोत्रमथो बलमिन्द्रियाणि च सर्वाणि सर्वं ब्रह्म उपनिषदं माहं ब्रह्म निराकुर्याम् मा ब्रह्म निराकरोत् अनिराकरणमस्त्वनिराकरणं मे अस्तु तदात्मनि निरतेय उपनिषत्सु धर्मास्ते मयि सन्तु ते मयि सन्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Namaste to all and welcome to this series on the Mahavakya, unfolding the Mahavakya Tattvam Asi. The Mahavakya is the essence of the Upanishad, also known as Vedanta, and the term Mahavakya means, usually it is translated literally great sentence. Maha, big, great, Vakya, sentence. But in Sanskrit, we also have a technical definition. What is Mahavakya? Akhanda Bodharthakam Vakyam Mahavakyam. It is a sentence that unfolds the oneness of the miserable, striving, struggling individual, the one who is at sea, looking for approval, appreciation, and some sense of self acceptance. So it is equating this individual with the creator of the universe, Bhagavan, Ishvara, Lord, Goddess, however you might invoke that creator. This is something which is naturally mind blowing. And so that is the definition of Mahavakya. Akhanda means the non separation, oneness. Non difference is Akhanda. Akhandarthaka, Akhandartha, the meaning of this non-separation, Bodhaka, Vakyam. Bodhaka means that which imparts, that which transmits, the sentence that transmits the oneness between two absolutely unlikely entities, absolutely dissimilar entities on the face of it. What do you have in common with Bhagavan? On the face of it, the truthful answer is nothing. Bhagavan is the creator. At best, I can create confusion. That's that I am the creator of confusion. Bhagavan is the creator of the whole universe. And then Bhagavan sustains the whole universe. I can barely sustain this mind, this body, and these senses. Bhagavan has the ability to take back the whole universe unto herself, himself. And what about me? I don't even have the grace to apologize and take back the words that I have said in a moment of anger or some kind of passion that I did not mean to say. I don't even have that capacity. Forget taking back the entire universe, resolving anything. I can barely resolve the confusion in my own mind. I can barely put to rest grudges from a long time ago. Grudges that have been held, from the previous births, from previous janmas. The grudges also have traveled from body to body, and this is me. This is me. This is the definition of I. And then this I is equated to that who is the one who is omniscient, omnipresent, all pervasive, almighty, fully resourceful, unto whom everything belongs, and non separate from everything. How is that even possible? If what is revealed by Mahavakya is an impossibility, a dream at best. If the message of Vedanta continued, in the Mahavakya, is not continued, culminating in the Mahavakya, is something that is redundant, then Vedanta has no place in our lives. No place. Because it is redundant. This Mahavakya is useless. Why? Because what I know about myself is indeed a reality. And what is the reality? I'm an idiot. I am small. I am at the mercy of so many situations in the world. I cannot get myself out of it. I am a struggling, striving individual. What is the proof of that? You want proof? Live 1 hour. Forget 1 day. Live 1 hour in my life, says the Jiva. Live 1 hour in my life. Live 1 hour in my head. Come and stay in my head. And then you will see all kinds of thoughts swinging from nerve to nerve and all kinds of notions doing acrobatics, gymnastics. So come live in my head. It is an open invitation, says the struggling, striving individual. And this is the proof. The proof is in the feeling. The proof is lies in the notions that have surrounded me. Like militia, you find yourself at the wrong place at the wrong time, and you enter some other country, and then there is this all the military surrounds, and then they redirect you back. You don't belong here. Something like that happened to me. I was being taken. Somebody was driving me to one of my talks in Washington, D.C. It was in the center of Washington, D.C. And then there, is the Pentagon. And then by mistake, the driver, who must have been new to those parts, took the exit for the Pentagon. And then we were just not even 30 seconds on this wrong road. Then we were surrounded by some 2, 3 trucks that came out of nowhere and redirected back. And they took down the driver's name, phone number, photograph, everything, horoscope, everything. And then only they understood this is an innocent mistake. We are not trying to attack the Pentagon. And then they let us back. So like this, the notions that I am an idiot, that I am this much alone, that I have all these likes and dislikes, preferences and prejudices, are guarded, are guarded against any intrusion. And so this individual who is convinced that this is who I am, obviously one would argue, does not need the Mahavakya, because there is no role for Vedanta if what you know about yourself is valid knowledge. If what you know about yourself, the sum total of your conclusions about yourself is valid knowledge, then Vedanta has no subject matter. Okay. So this is something to discuss. Then, if you can know what is taught by Vedanta through some other means of knowledge, such as inference, such as sight, if you can see the truth of yourself literally with your eyes, if you can objectify the I that is revealed by the Upanishads, by Vedanta, then again, Vedanta does not have a subject matter. But still, we hanker after the Upanishads. We are eager to know and internalize its message. And Mahavakya has its own, he's very famous. People may not be able to understand Sanskrit. People may not know what is what. But you just Google Tattvamasi, and if Tattvamasi is so famous, you Google Tattvamasi, it will have so many hits. So people don't know. This is Mahavakya. People don't know the technical definition that I gave at the start of this talk. People don't know anything, but still people know one thing. This is something I want. This Tattvamasi is something intriguing, and this Tattvamasi is something delightful. And moreover, this Tattvamasi, whatever that means, it is translated as thou art that. We'll talk about that later. And uh, so this Tattvamasi, whatever it might mean, whatever its import is, it has a relevance in my life. Even though I don't know it, I hanker after it. This means only one thing and one thing alone, that I am not happy with what? With what I know about myself as the truth. With what my ahankara, the I notion, the ego, for lack of a better term, the I notion is guarding so judiciously, so fervently. If what I know is valid knowledge, then I will not be interested in the Mahavakya because I'm happy with what I know to be true about myself, and I will not try to Google Tattvamasi or any other Mahavakya for that matter. I will not do that. It is futile. Then again, if the message of oneness of Vedanta Vakyas, such as Tattvamasi, that all that is here is you alone, that Bhagavan who you fear and from whom you feel alienated is you alone, the Jagat with which you have a lot of complaints is none other than you alone. Other jivas, other individual also striving like yourself, and with whom you have a lot of complaints, some of whom you like, most of whom you don't care about, and all of them is you alone. The Pancha Mahabhutas, the five elements, which we can agree are the source of this universe, at least on the objectifiable level, then that, the air is you alone. In fact, all this has come from the I, the Atman, says the Taittiriya Upanishad. Tasmad va etasmad atmana akashas sambhutah akashad vayuh vayoragnihi agnerapah adbhyah prithivi prithivya oshadhayah. So this is all come from the I. Tasmat Brahmanah, from that Brahman, va, or why, indeed, etasmad atmanah, from this I alone, space has come, and space includes time. Space has come, time has come, water has come, air has come, fire has come, earth has come, everything has come. And after earth has come, along with the earth, from the earth, trees have come, plants have come, and plants are food. And then, plants are the original food. You have only two options: either you eat the plant, or you feed the plant to the animal and eat the animal. Those are the only two options. The source of food is plants, oshadhi. And then, in other words, you can either be vegetarian or eat a vegetarian. That's the only options are there. Okay. So then, from that, this body, from that plant, from those plants, this body is sustained. This body that as though houses that infinite consciousness. The body houses the infinite consciousness. That consciousness which answers very faithfully to the question, are you here? If I ask the question, people who are taking, this talk for the first time, who are listening, will say, "What is this? What do you mean? Who are you here? What kind of a question is this? Is this a trick question?" No trick, no trick at all. This is a valid question. Are you here? Well, yeah, I am here. Then what does that mean? That means the I is already evident to the self evident. And if you want to impress your friends, you can say Swata Siddha, the same thing in Sanskrit, self evident Atma, Swata Siddha Atma. Then they'll say, "Oh, very nice. Looks like you've been studying Vedanta for a long time." It feels good, yeah. Sometimes you drop a few Sanskrit words, just few and far between. Not that we can manage any more than that, but still, once in a while you drop a few Sanskrit words, and the world is better for that. Okay, yeah. So this means the fact that you are here means something much bigger than how much we take it for granted. I am here means I don't need anybody else to certify my existence. I am already the I is already an established fact, the existence of this I. And so therefore, if the existence of this I is an established fact, then what is not overtly evident, what is not immediately evident to this I is what? Its nature. Its nature as that sentient consciousness that is everything without being any one thing. That I transcends this body mind sense complex, transcends any kind of identification. I am this, I am, 6 feet tall, I am this many kilograms in weight. From the standpoint of weight, from the standpoint of occupation, I am a brahmachari, I am a student, I am a lawyer, I am this, I am that, all this from the standpoint of occupation. And from the standpoint of possession, I am a homeowner. And I am a, stamp collector. All these things. It transcends any identification because all these identifications are at a certain level alone. They are clutching at straws, like the drowning man clutches at straws, the drowning person. Similarly, all these various identifications that we water and then put miracle grow and then they turn into creepers and then you say, "Oh my God, let me out. Where is the Upanishad? Where is it? Help." But you were the one who watered these notions. Why? Why did you water the notions? Why did you put some fertilizer? And Miracle Grow is not organic. We should have organic fertilizer. Okay, yeah, cow dung, things like that. Yeah. Then, so why did you feed the cow dung? And then why did you put water? Why did you expose these notions in a lovely decorated flower pot? Why did you expose these notions, these creeper-like notions, to the sun? So they got everything. They got a place in the sun, and then they got food, nourishment, and then so they did what they know how to do. They just grew and grew and grew. And the creepers grow everywhere. They don't grow in a straight line so that they can be contained. They grow all over the place. And then after they grew, like what is one good example? These blackberries, huh? These blackberries, you know they may be tasty, all right, provided you're not allergic to them. They may be tasty, all right, but once they take over, there is no tomorrow. Nothing. And so first you are very delighted. Oh, I didn't even plant it. It has come into the yard. How nice. One bush. I will harvest my own blackberries. And before you know, it is, it is two bushes. And then after 1 or 2 weeks later, those two bushes have become one. After all, it is all about oneness. You cannot even see where the one bush ends and the other bush comes, and then it is very bushy. That's why it's called bush. And then after that, what? Then we have then you have to readjust and make a new plan. You have to say, okay, doesn't matter, I'll call all the children of the neighborhood to do blackberry picking, and then whether you pick it or it has picked your yard. That's what it has done. Before you know, it proliferates. And similarly to these notions, to these berry like notions that are ultimately very, very dangerous. Why? Because they just strangulate, and they are thorny also. They strangulate and make you, just completely locked into these notions. I am this much alone. I am an idiot. Nobody loves me. And then after that, I have another important question. Why nobody loves me? So, first of all, the first wrong question, nobody loves me. Okay. And on top of that wrong question, another creeper. How come nobody loves me? Why am I so unlovable? All this. And why are these notions watered? If you ask, these notions are watered because they have a place in the life of the struggling, striving jiva, the individual. They have a place. And what is the place of these notions in the struggling, striving individual? Because the person believes that these notions give a sense of relief, respite from the pain and the fear and the sorrow of what is called samsara. What is samsara? Some sorrow or another that that by which the individual is beleaguered. Some sorrow or another. This is what it is. Samsara, some total of all sorry experiences is samsara. And this samsarin, the one who is subject to samsara, is the one groping for something to come out of this glub, 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 drowning in these notions, being strangulated in these notions. And as I said earlier, the drowning person cannot be picky. Somebody offers a hand. You cannot say, this is COVID time. Did you put sanitizer before you offered me your hand? The drowning person is not picky. Or your hand is very dirty. First wash it, for 20 seconds. Sing happy birthday to yourself 2 times. And, and then offer the hand. The drowning person grabs on to whatever is there. And these creepers that are, first of all, has pushed this person into a place of desperate imprisonment. These creepers are the cause of this imprisonment within samsara. The creepers cannot be the redemption. A wonderful writer, a feminist writer by the name of Audre Lorde, wrote a long time ago, the master's tools cannot dismantle the master's house. African American writer talking about racial oppression. A very timeless phrase, beautiful. The master's tools of domination of all these things cannot dismantle the master's house. Means this systemic on the systemic level, racism cannot be dismantled by the very tools used to oppress. We have to find new tools. We have to find new ways of understanding and overcoming this problem. But how did these tools, how did these brambles, and how did these creepers, why did I water them? Why did they get watered in the first place? The answer to this question is very, very clear. The answer to this question is because I was grasping at straws. I was grasping at straws because the drowning person is not choosy. The person drowning in their own notions, the person being strangulated by thorny notions which are ultimately unacceptable. In the beginning, they offer a quick way out of these, out of the pain of one's being. No approval, no self love, insecurity centered on the self critique, self judgment. So, a quick way out is to tout one's accomplishments. And in order to tout one's accomplishments, one has to have accomplished something. So one becomes a doer, keeps on doing, karta, 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 karta. And then you become a bhokta. You want to sit and enjoy your doing. And this doer is the one who is convinced that out of this doing I can get out, I can get to the place of some sense of self acceptance. Self acceptance, which the Sanskrit word for which is moksha, is not is not a product of action. It is not subject to being produced by action. Why? Because self acceptance is one's nature. No, really? Then you don't know me. Because I really don't accept myself. How can it be my nature? Go to sleep. I'll show you. No, now? No, no, not now. When you go to sleep, just look at yourself when you are asleep. Have some cameras, take some selfie of you as you sleep. No inhibitions. No inhibitions at all. The mouth is half open, drool is coming out. And then and then what else? The limbs are all over the place as though they don't even belong to the individual. And even the most accomplished musician is out of pitch when they snore. They don't snore in Shruti. Think about it. The person will not be caught dead with a wrong note. Pitch perfect during the waking hours. But put the fellow to sleep and then and the person no, it is not in any kind of a note. No Shruti. Think about this. No inhibitions. Not a care what anybody thinks. Why? Because in sleep, one is one with the whole. One is happy without going on the path of trying to accomplish things, trying to water finite notions of the I that that infinitely proliferate and then strangulate one later on. So the self is acceptable is an established fact which can be sensed even experientially, which is sensed not just during sleep, also in the waking moments. Think about it. In the waking moments, what do? Let's say one day you wake up and then you are at peace, something wonderful has happened, or somehow everything is right with the world. That's what you say. But actually Vedanta does makes this sentence do shirashasana. It makes it do a headstand. All is right with you, therefore everything is right with the world. By some grace of the Lord operating over time, you find yourself in a magnanimous place. You are not ticked off even though someone violates your privacy, even though someone comes, does say something that you really do not like. You still say, "Theek hai." Okay, no problem. Doesn't matter. You are lucky. Bach gaya. You are lucky because I'm in a good mood. You say that even. You are lucky you got away with it today. Be careful because today I'm in a good mood, so I'm letting you just, yeah. It's like the uh, innocent rabbit, a little bunny that has wandered into the lion's lair. And the lion, the king of the forest, is sitting there. And this is an important detail in the story, okay? He has just had his food. He has had lunch, okay? It is a post lunch lion, in his lair, happily sitting and sunning himself on a winter afternoon. And the unwitting baby bunny just starts to hop around, a little curious, a little rebellious, doesn't want to listen to its mother who says, "Don't go that side. No, no, I want to see what is there. Why nobody should go." It just hops around, and then it hops on the extended tail of the lion. The lion just swishes the tail. And then what? Then it comes around and hops on the foot of the lion that is lying down, digesting its food. And the lion opens one eye and sees that it is not worth trying to even expend the calories. This is easy prey. But let it go. It seems to be a baby. Let it go. And that magnanimity sometimes you command even in the waking state. In the waking also you command the same magnanimity of the lion and other people's transgressions when they pull your tail. Do I have a tail? Yes, tailbone is there and metaphorical tail is there. And so when they pull the tail, when they rub you the wrong way, you just let it go. And not only do you let the person go, you feel good that you have let them go. This is important. You feel good that you have let them go. And not only do you feel good that you have let it go, you want to feel like this all the time. The message of the Upanishads is in a totally in keeping with the yearning of the human being for self acceptance and for getting rid of these thorny creepers of finite notions. And therefore, if you can know this that is taught by Vedanta, this fact that the self is already acceptable, in fact, the only thing that is there is the self. There is nothing other than this I. All that is there is the self, and that is you. You are Bhagavan, you are one with the whole universe. There is nothing other than you. There is nothing before you, nothing behind you, nothing in front of you, nothing to fear, nothing to be separated from. All that is there is you alone. And this you happens to be one with the cause of the universe. If the message of Vedanta can be gained by any other means of knowledge that is God given, such as what? Such as direct perception. Can you see the wholeness? The answer is no. Can you infer the wholeness? No. Can you hear the wholeness? No, it is not. This wholeness, this oneness is not something that is objectifiable because it is centered on the I, which is always the subject. The subject can never become the object. The object, in fact, is objectified by the subject being self revealing. As we saw earlier, it reveals itself through just the simple question, "Are you here?" And therefore, if the subject is self revealing, then what? Then it doesn't need to be objectified. In fact, it cannot be objectified. And so, this I, if the message of the Upanishad is given through any means of knowledge, that I have in at my fingertips in my command. These five sense organs. You cannot taste the eye. Why? The taster is eye. You cannot, you cannot smell the eye because the eye has no smell, no form. You cannot see it because it has no forms. You cannot hear it because it makes not a sound. What is the sound made by eye? Then we'll have to quote a Buddhist koan here, which is very appropriate. What is that? The sound made by the eye is the same sound. I'm extending this, okay? Is the same sound made by the clapping of one hand. So what sound came? No sound. I is silent without sound. That doesn't mean it is opposed to sound. It is the source of both sound and silence. Therefore it is neither sound nor silence. Where are you going to go with this? It is not subject to the being objectified by the ears. You cannot see it, you cannot feel it. Let me just feel the eye. It is not some kind of a velvet or some pleasing thing to touch. No, you cannot feel it, you cannot touch it, you cannot taste it, you cannot intuit it, because the one who is intuiting is the eye, the hearer is eye, the toucher is eye, the one who is picking up the smells is eye. So the eye is not subject also to inference. And and some people, it's not for want of trying. Some people tried it, like the philosopher Descartes. Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. And suppose you asked Descartes a simple question. uh, Mr. Descartes, do you think it's going to rain today? And Descartes looked around. This is an imaginary conversation, okay? Descartes looks around and says, I don't think so. Does Descartes stop existing in that moment? When he said, I don't think so? If you don't think, you stop existing? No. Being a very faithful philosopher, Descartes also revised his statement at the end of his life. He said, I think I therefore am is not valid. I am, therefore I can think. In fact, what I was doing was putting Descartes before day horse. This is what he would say. So, therefore, what? So, therefore, I is not subject to inference. You cannot infer the I. The content, the truth of the inferer is I. You cannot compare the I to something else. This is also a means of knowledge called upama, comparison, some kind of a comparison of a known entity with an unknown entity, and so there is some kind of a similarity established. And then, so that is also not possible. And then you cannot, the last means of knowledge available to us, i.e., what is that called? Anupalabdhi, the cognition of absence, is also not applicable to the I, because the I is never absent. How are you going to use the cognition of absence in order to cognize the ever present one? Not possible. So therefore, one is totally lost how to know this I. If this I, as I said earlier, is available for any other means of knowledge, then also what we call Vedanta doesn't have a subject matter. Now we are in a very interesting predicament. I do not like what I know about myself. I do not consider it valid knowledge because it is subject to vyabhichara. Vyabhichara means contradiction. In sleep, in sleep I'm happy, and certain days, certain minutes of certain days I'm happy, and so therefore this is not something that I am subject to this always. So therefore, I reject what I know about myself as a valid means of knowledge. And then I also understand. If I didn't before, I understand now that this I is not something I can know by myself. Therefore, a little help is needed. तद्विज्ञानार्थं स गुरुमेव अभिगच्छेत् समित्पाणिः श्रोत्रियं ब्रह्मनिष्ठं says the Mundaka Upanishad. Tadvijnanartham, in order to know this, because the this that is to be known, this oneness that is to be known, is out of the purview of the sense organs, the organs of action. It is not a product of action because it ever is. And being the subject, it cannot be known as an object with the help of the sense organs. And therefore, only one other option is left. Vedantam Patha, study Vedanta. Okay, then what book should I read? I get this question all the time. What book should I read? Because if you Google Tattvamasi, go to Amazon.com and Google Tattvamasi, there'll be so many books. Which book do you recommend? No book. Why? Because this is why we have a tradition, a very sound tradition of verbally transmitted knowledge. Why? So that these notions, these creeper-like thorny notions, are tied up with another creeper. They are tied up and kept separate. They don't attack the person who is being taught. That is the beauty of the teaching. The strangulating creepers in the form of various notions cannot, cannot allow you to proceed from one page of one Tattvamasi book to the next page even. What if I study the source? What if I read the Chandogya Upanishad chapter 6? Go right ahead. You know, there was a person. Aha, his name was Shvetaketu. Okay, that sounds good, and then immediately you start thinking, what does the name mean? If you're a Sanskrit buff, you look up Shweta, white, Ketu, comet. Oh, so his name is White Comet. Oh, that's interesting. And then from there, the mind goes to another thing called comet, some kind of cleanser. Okay, and then you say, oh, maybe Upanishad also is like comet. And then you start going into your own thing. And then what? Then his father taught him this wonderful knowledge. My father never taught anything. My father was didn't even love me. And here, this lucky fellow, Shwetu's father, Shwetu's daddy, such a nice daddy. My father was just, was like a wild seed. Somewhere he just, would go, somewhere he would do. He was unavailable. When he was available, he was inconsistent. See, all the infrastructure. These are the creepers of notions, pains, sorrows, experiences of the past. They come in the way. Your own infrastructure comes in the way of reading the Upanishad. Therefore, the caveat given by Adi Shankara in the Bhashya of the Mundaka Upanishad itself is that, so, Panditopi, Panditopi son, even if you are a Pandit, even if you have studied Sanskrit, Swatantriyena Brahmanveshanam na kuryat. Please do not undertake the enquiry of the self on your own. Why is this said? Otherwise, what will happen to poor Vedanta teachers? Already nobody, cares about them. So this way, maybe they will have a job. No, that is not the reason it is said. The reason it is said like this is because the Veda is a means of knowledge in its own right. Both Veda, the first portion of the Veda that deals with rites and rituals and worship, and the second portion of the Veda that deals with this, that whose main purpose is to dismantle this notion of a person who is a desiring, wanting, self unfulfilled, and what else, insecure person. So, if Vedanta is a means of knowledge, it needs a microphone, it needs to be handled, it needs to be made alive and relevant to your life. If it is not made alive and relevant to your life, then it is of no use. It is just, it is dead. It is as good as a heap of words. So when the person fraught with all these notions opens the book and reads Tattvamasi, you are the cause of the universe. Next. And then such people come and tell me, I have studied the I have read the Chandogya Upanishad, but nothing happened. Business as usual. I have read the Kathopanishad, nothing happened. Business as usual. I have read the Kenopanishad, even nothing happened, nothing at all happened, because the Kenopanishad is verbal yoga. All the asanas that we recognize are there in the Kenopanishad. The Kenopanishad does headstand of all the notions. Everything is there. Shoulder stand, head stand. Keno Upanishad, what is that? Attending and studying the Keno Upanishad is like doing an extended workshop on inversions. Yeah, this is what Keno Upanishad is. Everything is upside down. Head stand, shoulder stand, hand stand, Mayurasana, forearm stand, everything. Yeah. For whom the person who thinks I have no standing is then made to do all these asanas cognitively. This is what the whole thing is. Cognitively, one is made to do all this, and then one. Therefore, Upanishad is not a matter to be read. No matter how accomplished you may be in philosophy, in Sanskrit, self enquiry is conducted with the help of someone who has gone through that self enquiry, just like you have. That is where the safety is. That is where the safety of the tradition is. That is what makes the institutions, ashrams like Shivananda, not a cult, because it's not based on a single person and their charisma. It is not based on a single person. The knowledge survives and is transmitted from person to person, from student to teacher, faithfully, and there without attrition. That is why it is alive, because knowledge is handled by the teacher. The teacher is just a conduit of knowledge. And what is this knowledge? It is nothing but therapy. In fact, Vedanta is super therapy. Super therapy. Why? Why is it super therapy? It is super therapy because, and primarily because, it starts where therapy meets its end. With regular therapy, you have to just stay with the notion, okay, I had a terrible childhood, that's why all these issues are there. With Vedanta, a super therapy, it allows you to transcend that association, that stranglehold of the childhood. It allows you to transcend that and allows that pain to melt with the compassion of the Mahavakya, with the what it has to reveal. And what this Mahavakya is, what does it have to reveal, and then who this Shvetaketu is, we'll all see that in the next talk. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you.
I would like to thank very much Swamini Svatma Vidyananda. Let's give her a big hand.